Well, it's 10 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. Let's welcome in Facebook and YouTube people that may be already connected or will be connecting up with us here in just a few minutes. If you comment, I'll let everybody know that you're out there. We won't give them your last name most of the time or your PIN number to your very valuable debit account or anything like that. Just let people know that you're out there this morning. And 21 degrees is the current temperature with a 5-mile-an-hour breeze blowing up at the airport to the northwest. Makes it feel like 21 out there. I learned something this morning. I learned the best way to pick mint off of the plant. You know, I've always struggled going out there all summer long, going to the plant, trying to pick the mint and what do I cut? What don't I cut? Am I ruining everything like that? This morning, because everything was frozen, all I had to do was just draw my hands through the branches, and the mint just fell right off and into the bag. And it was a beautiful thing, ladies and gentlemen. Things that you learn. Oh my God, we're not even talking about Major League Baseball this morning. I'm flying high. Let's talk about where we left off yesterday and continue into, there's Flo and Joe, there's Kathleen. I told you we'd have people, so that Facebook is working, and so is the YouTube connection working also. Prayer line open for you right now, 505-310-9658, all the way till 8 o'clock in the morning. We have an email address, klyn903@gmail.com is just another way to where you can get a hold of us. Let's get into our study this morning. Okay? So, we've been talking, especially when we got into the 9th chapter, about the plan that God's, the eternal plan that God has for Jew and Gentile. A lot of questions people have had. Even personally, I've heard a lot of questions that people have asked me, well, what about, I think it was Fabiola one time that had a family member that was a little confused and said, well, you know, what about the Jews? Because Jesus died 2,000 years ago. Well, let me tell you one thing. How is it that we come into this relationship with God? Well, we're right there in the middle of the 10th chapter of the book of Romans. It tells us you hear the word and then you respond to the word by faith. In fact, verse 17 says, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So the message has to be preached. But wasn't the message preached in the times of the prophets, both major and minor? Wasn't the message preached in the books of wisdom like Psalms and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and the book of Job? We even on Sundays we've gone back and said, you can go all the way to the 3rd chapter of Genesis, and in the garden, God is already saying that he has a plan. We realize God's plan. Good morning, Andrea. Good morning, Jennifer. Glad you guys are along with us. God bless you all this morning. Jennifer, how are you feeling? Been praying for you, Jennifer. Anyway, God had a plan from the beginning. Right after man falls, God begins to reveal his hand little by little. So, if God has a plan and the message is being preached, what is it that man's responsibility is? To believe. Okay? To believe. That faith, we hear the word, and then, so Old Testament people knew that Messiah was coming. You say, well, no, it's not a stretch. It's not a stretch at all. Because the Bible even says that Jesus Christ was crucified at the foundation of the world. In the heart of God, in the plan of God, Jesus was already crucified. Was it 2,000? Well, okay, physically it was 2,000 years ago, but the message was still there, and people had to put their faith in him. Old Testament, New Testament. Now, they had the message. They believed in it. You can even go to the ministry of Moses, and the plan of God for salvation is played out through the Jewish people finding themselves in Egypt, and then through the ministry of Moses, them coming out of Egypt, the blood on the doorpost, hello, the going through the Red Sea into the wilderness, arriving at Mount Sinai and receiving all of those. And then let's look at the holy days, the 7 feast days that God had set apart for people to come and to meet him, and the message was there. So it wasn't just spoken message, it was a lived out message that people had. You know, they went into the tabernacles. Tabernacles just finished, okay, just about a week ago or so. Tabernacles finished. And the Jewish people would go out into the wilderness and they would live in tents, remembering how their forefathers, who knew that Messiah was coming, because the word of God had come and told them, and what did they have to do? They had to receive it. So those that are alive now and living in tents, and those who were alive 3,000 years ago, before Jesus ever, walked on earth, they were both looking. So they were looking at Messiah from one side of the cross. We look at it through another side of the cross. But we put our faith in God. He said, well, did they know about the cross? Well, there was a lot of stuff. If they wanted to hear it, there's hundreds of Old Testament prophecies concerning Messiah who was to come. And he came, and many people followed him, believed in him. By faith, ladies and gentlemen, by faith. And that's just one answer. Okay? And let me tell you, another thing is, here's something very foundational. God will judge us according to revelation. What has God shown us personally? To whom much is given, much will be expected, much will be required for those who have been given much. And if you haven't been given much, but you believe in that which you have given, I would say that for some people out there that living in jungles or someplace like that, they look around at creation, they know there's a creator, and in their heart they know that he's there. God expresses himself to them, and they believe in him and they trust in him by faith. So faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So what Paul is doing here, second half of the 10th chapter of the book of Romans, in verse 17, slow down, Mr. Size, is he saying that there's an open door for Jew and Gentile. And what is God's plan for the Jew? Well, it's the same plan that God has for the Gentile, for Messiah to come, for the anointed one to come, for the Christos. That's what anointed means in, what was it, in Greek, was Christos, the Christ. That's why we call him Jesus Christ. Christ wasn't his last name. Hate to blow that out of the water on you, but that was in his last name. But you believe in him, you trust in him. And what God's doing on the other side of the world, don't know, except what I hear. And God's a moving and God's a working. And by faith, it's up to me to understand what God is revealing to me, and by faith laying hold on it. So then, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And what is faith? What is faith? What is faith? Well, the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, right there at the beginning, gives us the definition of faith. The substance of things hoped for, verse 1, chapter 11, the book of Hebrews, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay? It's something that's beyond this natural. Faith is, and God has given to each person, everybody has a measure of faith. It's seed that he has put into your hand, and if you want more seed, you got to plant that which is in your hand, and you got to nurture it, and you got to allow it to harvest, and boom, you take the harvest and you have more than you started off with. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And we could even talk a little bit about doubting Thomas and this whole scene bit, but we'll leave that alone. But let's go back to Romans chapter 10. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, indeed. Their sound has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. Notice it's all caps in the New King James Bible that I have on my eSword Bible program. All caps means that it comes out of, and not all translations do this, okay, but this particular New King James edited version has it in all caps, and that means it comes out of the Old Testament. They are quoting something from the Old Testament. And remember, I told you that the word was out there in the Old Testament. The word of faith was out there in the Old Testament. And you're in the synagogue or you're at the temple and you're hearing the rabbi talking about Messiah to come and you put your faith in it, you are considered righteous. Yolanda, good morning. Good morning. Just saw that there.